Hey everybody, today on the Daily X, brain on a chip being developed by Samsung. Also a new Navy weapon that promises to silence our opponents. And finally, something new on Loch Ness Monster. Join us on the Daily X. Hey everybody, thanks for joining me on the Daily X, where I discuss news from the world of the weird and the world of science, stuff that interests me. Please join me on the channel, comment below. Anybody that wants to be a guest on this show or join me in any way, please contact me. So just a few stories today. We'll start with a story from Mysterious Universe. Apparently, Loch Ness Monster has been named the UK's most popular legend, defeating the Green Man, Selkies, and Redcaps. I don't know what Redcaps are. I've kind of heard of Selkies. So, yoo-hoo for Loch Ness. He won a contest. Also, apparently, there's some new footage of Loch Ness making the rounds. They've got an article on here about it. I'm not going to go and look at that footage myself. I don't really have that much interest in Loch Ness, but I know a lot of people might. I don't know, from my understanding is there's just no way that the biological levels inside that loch are enough to sustain the existence of any kind of a large creature. But who knows? Maybe it's coming in from another portal or something. So in the world of science, you've probably seen this and hadn't really put it together. But I'm taking this story from livescience.com, a really interesting site for science, but this has been reported on the news and stuff too. There are currently eruptions going on at the La Palma Island, which is part of the Canary Island chain. And the reason this may ring a bell with you, you probably saw it, you noticed, I think it was maybe about 10 years ago, they worked out models and also had studied the past and realized that landslides created by this volcano can create super tsunamis. The estimate, I think, for the height of this tsunami when it reached the east coast of the United States is 30 meters or more, I believe. So this is something that would destroy New York City, Boston, any city along the coast of the East Coast, any city along the west coast of Africa, Europe. So it would run up the rivers in Spain and Portugal. I mean, this would be the most catastrophic event in human history if it creates that kind of a landslide. There is evidence in the past of tsunamis like that. They find boulders way up on cliffs that were carried there by some kind of waves. But I don't want to cause a panic with anybody, because obviously this volcano erupts, I'm not sure, something like every 20 or 30 years anyways, or maybe every 40, 50 years, I don't know. But it's erupted numerous times in modern history, and it has not created a landslide. But it is interesting to watch this, though, because, you can see it's a pretty active volcano right now. They've had to evacuate villages, and there's a lot of lava flow going on and bursts into the air. There's lava that's actually reaching the water. So this could be something that bears watching. If you live in one of those coastal cities and you hear some kind of an alert, I don't know, head for higher ground. So next up, this is from Weird Science News. This is just some conversation with Michio Kaku, who's a really interesting guy. He likes to be on these shows a lot. I like Michio, but he does have a tendency to want to give the quote that'll get him some exposure. But anyways, he says that it is not a good idea to contact alien life if we find it. He says, soon we'll have the Webb telescope up in orbit, and we'll have thousands of planets to look at. And that's why I think the chances are quite high that we might make contact with an alien civilization. He says, there are some colleagues of mine that believe we should reach out to them. I think that's a terrible idea. We all know what happened to Montezuma when he met Cortez in Mexico so many hundreds of years ago. And that's certainly true. If you have a weaker civilization coming up against a more powerful situation, usually the results are not very pretty for the weaker civilization. Obviously, not only the Aztecs and the Incas, but Native Americans in the United States, or tribes in Africa, anywhere, even just it's human nature. And it's probably the nature of any civilized species, unless they learn to outgrow it. And that's the hope, is that a civilization that survives long enough would learn how to outgrow those kind of desires to conquer, because we have no reason to think that they will. I mean, I guess the argument is that if they don't outgrow it, they would destroy each other, but that doesn't really make sense, because we don't know what this alien intelligence is. It may bear very little resemblance to us. It may be more, may more resemble a beehive, that a more intelligent beehive or something like that. We just don't know if they need resources, and if there's something. I mean, it seems to me an advanced civilization won't need resources, or they'll be able to find resources however they want. But we just don't really know. Maybe they want organs. Maybe they want biological resources. I mean, it does seem like there's more to lose than there is to gain from contacting that. So Mitchell goes on to say, now, personally, I think that the aliens out there would be friendly, but we can't gamble on it. So I think we will make contact, but we should do it very carefully. So I know people get really, really twisted up in this subject. It's a really emotional thing. Some people, for a lot of people, aliens and UFOs are kind of a religion. It really, very, very much a religion, because people look at this as though this is kind of their new god. We're all bad, so there must be something good in the sky. There are angels. I disagree with that on every level. I don't think that we're all bad. I think human civilization is phenomenal. It does bad things and needs to improve. But we're the only civilization, the only living creature that we know of that even has such a thing as morals or rights or any concept of that. Animals don't have that. And civilization has produced marvelous things. It also, we've had to outgrow many of the abuses of the industrial age. You wouldn't want to live in 19th century London unless you were wealthy. Probably the same with New York, or various times, or Pittsburgh or something. But these are wonderful places to live now. So we've improved a lot, and we will continue to improve. This idea and warfare has never been less than it is now throughout the entire span of human history. Less people die now as a percentage of the total population. Far less people die now from warfare or violence than at any other time in human history. So when you think that it's all gloom and doom, no, that's just stuff that's given to, that is fed to you by your own ideology, and to a certain extent by the media, because a lot of people share that ideology. Anyways, also in this same article, it says that aliens may be found deep in the ocean rather than deep in space. The idea is that aliens have put bases in these trenches that are largely unexplored because they're too deep for us to reach. Anything's possible, right? So let's move along to the Navy is developing a sonic weapon that makes its target unable to speak. Well, I can think of a lot of uses for that. I kind of wish I had that back in the day. I wouldn't mind dropping one of those on the set of The View, but I digress. So they're spending millions on these sonic weapons. I don't know. I mean, it seems like a noble idea that you're developing these non-lethal weapons in order to do crowd control and things like that. Something like that might have been, I don't know, non-lethal weapons could have in theory been useful in the evacuation of Kabul. But there's obviously a huge danger when you're developing these things that impact people's brains. I don't know. So I'm not against it, but I see a lot of risk involved in it too. All right, let's get to the last story, which I think is the most interesting one of the day. We've all heard in science fiction the idea of downloading your brain onto a computer or onto a chip. Some of us might think that's impossible. Some, for reasons that go beyond technology, that you can't, that it has to do with the human soul. I don't know. But and then others would say that it's just far too complicated. That the human brain is too is you can't separate the brain from the body. Everything the human brain knows about its experience is wrapped up with the body that it's attached to. But anyways, this is actually Samsung, which is one of the most advanced technological companies in the world. And one of the, if I remember right, there are three superpower, the three companies that make the most widely used super advanced computer chips. The most advanced one is based in Taiwan. I forget the name of it. The other one is Intel in California. And the other one, I believe, is Samsung, which is in South Korea. So they have a full program now that they've announced. They want to create chips so that you can copy, paste, I'm quoting this part from the article, right onto a 3D chip. This is really interesting, though. So the tech company is again, this is in zmescience.com, which has some really cool science stuff on it. So I recommend you go there. I'll put a link to it in the on the channel. So the tech company is proposing a way to copy a brain's neuron wiring map into a 3D neuromorphic chip. I believe morph means body. The approach, detailed in a new paper, relies on a nano electron array developed by a group of researchers that enters a big volume of neurons to record where the connections are made and the strength of those connections. That's not really clear what's going on. I read that word for word, but it's not 100% clear what they're doing there. So enters a big volume. All right, so I guess they're, I don't know, I'm somehow copying the number of neurons that are in the brain and copying that onto the chip and copying the actual connections. I don't know why it's written that way, but researchers believe that with this approach, they will one day be able to download people's brains onto 3D chips. Well, I don't know. I mean, I know with my own particular health situation, I'd be willing to, and my own beliefs about life after death, I guess I'd be willing to give that a chance. But I have considered that scenario, at least for science fiction. I have a science fiction novel that's been in an dormant state for the last couple of years that I should go back to, but that's a big part of it. So even Google and Microsoft and other organizations are working on similar projects, chips and other related things. As everybody probably knows, Elon Musk is working on his company called Neuralink, which is trying to build connections to the human brain. This would obviously be very useful for people that are paralyzed or have other similar handicaps. But there's so many other things that once you go down that path, you'd be doing with it. So, working with engineers from Harvard University, Samsung presented an approach to create a memory chip that approaches the computing features of the brain that have so far been outside the reach of current technology. This includes autonomy, cognition, low power, I suffer plenty of that, facile learning, and adaptation to the environment, for example, all around a brain-like design. The vision we present, this is from the company's brochure, the vision we present is highly ambitious, says Don He Ham, fellow of Samsung Advanced Institute of Technology and professor of Harvard. He says, but working toward such a heroic goal will push the boundaries of machine intelligence, neuroscience, science, and semiconductor technology. That's all true, and it's going to happen, but obviously a lot of scary things can come out of that too. The human brain contains roughly 86 billion neurons, and the way they are connected is even more complex. These connections are largely behind the functions of the brain, and they're what make it so special as an organ. For neuromorphic engineering, the goal has always been, at least since the field officially started in the 1980s, to mimic the structure and function of the neuronal network on a silicon. So mimic that brain function onto a silicon chip. Nevertheless, this has proven more difficult than expected, as is not much knowledge on how neurons are linked together to create the brain's higher functions. And that's why the original target of neuromorphic engineering was been recently changed to a design chip inspired by the brain instead of to mimic it so rigorously. So instead of trying to copy it in recent years, they've just been trying to do something that is inspired by the way the brain connects to itself. So, however, the researchers, I love a however, and always something good always comes after her. However, the researchers at Samsung are now suggesting a way to go back to this original goal of neuromorphics. The nano electrode, the developed. See, when I stumble on these things, you think it's because I can't read. It's because there are actually grammatical errors in these articles or spelling mistakes and stuff. No matter, anyways. So the nano electrode, the developed world. I can't even read this. It's not written properly. The nano electrode, the developed, would enter a big number of neurons and register their electric signals with a high level of sensitivity. I read that as it's written. The recordings would then, all right, that's supposed to be a they, that's missing a Y. The nano electrode they developed would enter a big number of neurons and register their electric signals with a high level of sensitivity. The recordings would then inform where neurons connect with each other and the strength of those connections. So I guess what that means, if I understand this, is they would have a very sensitive nano electrode that would be attached to your brain. I don't know if they'd have to do this internally. I would think you'd have to go inside the brain, but this would record the number of neurons and the signals and start mapping that out. And using a number of these electrodes, they would take that information and create a chip or put it onto a chip. The neuronal wiring map will be copied based on those recordings and then pasted to memories. All right, this gets a little creepy. Either non-volatile ones, such as those commonly available in solid-state drives. What memories are available in drives? I mean, like people's pictures and stuff? I don't know. It doesn't. Or to recently develop ones, such as resistive random access ones. Each memory would represent the strength of the neural connection in the map. All right, it doesn't explain what any of that is. So I don't really know how they're, I know that scientists have gotten better at, or have now figured out how to look at an MRI and read simple memories. So something simple. All right, here's an image of an apple, and they're able to map it on the MRI. This is to what's going on inside your head. So maybe they'll get better at doing that. Researchers suggest a way to paste this map to a memory network using specially engineered non-volatile memories. These can learn and express the neuronal map when driven by intercellularly recorded signals. Thank you for making me say that word. There's a challenge, however, as the human brain has 100 billion neurons. Didn't they just say earlier they had 70 million? I don't know. Not to nitpick, but this needs some editing. There's a challenge, however. All right, they have 100 billion and 1,000 times more synaptic connections. This means the chip will require about 100 trillion or so memories, a difficult challenge for Samsung. While the researchers are optimistic they could use a 3D integration of memories to address this issue, it will probably take quite a bit of time for Samsung or any other company working on neuromorphism to further implement the technology. Well, so one of the interesting things with this is that a question that comes up to me is, if you're able to map, let's say you're able to map my memories and put them on a chip, and this is just something that you're able to program. Can you take some of my memories and insert them into your memories when your mind is downloaded onto a chip? So you're mixing up people's memories, or maybe take a whole bunch of memories and mix them up and create someone that has completely, multiple people inside basically one brain, or at least one brain that has access to different memories that it thinks are its own, but were not originally its own. And that includes the idea, can you eventually manufacture the memories you want, which then you get into things like the Matrix and stuff like that. But even just short of the matrix, can you take someone and confuse the issue by putting different memories onto that chip? And another issue that comes up, so if you can take my mind and put it onto a chip, is there any reason you can't just take that chip and copy it? So I know this would be a terrible thing for the world, but you, in theory, could have 1 million of me out there. Obviously, no one wants 1 million of me, but maybe you want 1 million LeBron James, or at least 1 million LeBron James brains out there. Or maybe that's not the best brain to use as an example. Maybe Michio Kaku, as we talked about. Maybe humanity would be better if we had 1 million Michio Kakus out there doing research and doing TV shows. I don't know. It's just what are the issues that come up with these copies? And once you make a copy, does each one become independent and it has its own life, or can you share memories from the various copies with each other? I see no reason why you couldn't. If everybody's all these Michio Kakus are networked on the internet or whatever exists in the future, and so you have 1 million Michio Kakus all working together as kind of one mind, and what would the effect of that be on Michio Kaku's personality? To me, it would be, I think the nearest you could say would be completely unknown. But very quickly, whatever that entity is that used to be known as Michio Kaku would be a very, very different thing, with completely unpredictable goals and feelings, and who knows where that would go. But I do think that the mind on the chip thing, anything that human beings can do, they will eventually do. I think that's one thing that we know, especially things that aren't immediately known to be evil. So something, and that's the thing with any technology, whether from the development of fire, from the development of the first tools with spears and rocks, they were useful to survive and they were useful for war. And this goes on. That's never going to stop. And the only way to stop these things is to surrender freedom, and that's not an alternative that I want either. I don't want the people on The View deciding what is acceptable and what isn't. I don't want Donald Trump or Barack Obama or Joe Biden making these decisions. I don't trust any of them to make those decisions. So I don't know. So the bottom line, though, is if it is technically possible someday to put brains on a chip, it will be done. Now, I think myself that some version of that can be done. There may be a loss. That may not be quite the same person, but something will be there. And I think it'll be done within the lifetime of my nieces. My oldest niece is 18. She's in college. I think most of the people that will listen to this show, it will be done in there, and it will be done in your lifetime. If I didn't have a terminal disease, I think there's a good chance it would be done in my lifetime, because I think within the next 25, 30 years, this kind of thing will be done. You have Moore's law, where you keep every couple of years, you keep doubling the amount of transistors you can put on a chip. And that kind of thing is, if that continues, and there's every reason to think that it will, that's exponential. So I don't know, I don't have the math ability to calculate how long it would take to get to the number of transistors that you need to match the human brain. But I would think that you'll be able to get there pretty soon, certainly within 20, 30 years, I would say. And then if you think also, like this mentions, it's a 3D chip. So let's say you have one chip and you manage to get 10 billion or 100 billion connections on that chip, but then you stack those chips in a 3-dimensional, which is all kinds of programming is necessary for that is not available yet, but will be 10 or 20 years from now. So you could have a pretty powerful chip, and that's not even getting into something like quantum computing, which if there's ever a way to really truly take advantage of quantum computing, you would have enough connections that you could map easily to easily simulate all the connections in the known universe. That's how powerful a true quantum chip would be if it becomes possible. So, anyways, that's it for today's headlines. Please feel free to add to the conversation in any way. And if you've made it this far, thank you very much for listening.
Not the X-Files, our X-Files. Welcome to our X-Files Vault. Regular people talking about unexplained phenomena. UFOs. Ghosts. Cryptids. Hidden archaeology. Weird science. Our stories. Our takes. Our X-Files Vault.